Alrighty, good evening, everyone. I'm Sean Emerson, ACT President. Thank you all for being here. Appreciate it on a beautiful May night. We're excited for our speaker tonight, Cordell Pugh. Many of you may know him from Twitter and whatnot and online circles. He's a great voice here in the county. But before we get to him, let's just do our introductions real quick. So like I said, I'm Sean Emerson. I've been the ACT President here for a couple months. Let's just go around the room. I guess we can start on this end, but Michael, we can just go that way and zigzag back and forth.
Mike Larkin, ACT member, Silver Spring. I spent a lot of time with President too. Also on the steering committee for Montgomery Parole.
See Michael.
Chip Plummer, College Park, Maryland.
Dino Ruby, Old Town, Alexandria.
Lev, you want to say hello?
Hi, Lev, ACT organizer.
Oh, sorry. How's it going down?
I'm Kevin Garland, Fort Brent.
Tina Slater, Silver Spring. How come Kathy and I are the only women here?
My fiance asks the same question every time.
Maybe some more will show up.
Chris Farrell, treasurer and Kendall. Two to follow the board, a member of the team voters.
Anyone else we missed? Yeah, that's good. Thanks for being here. Alrighty, so I guess I'll now introduce our speaker. If there's no other announcement, I'll do some announcements right at the end about Metro and whatnot. So Cordell Pugh is our speaker tonight. As I said, he has lived in Montgomery County for most of his life. When he's not online, at Cordell Traffic on Twitter and other areas. Cordell is an undergraduate student currently taking online courses after completing 2 years in person and taking time off during the pandemic. Cordell contributes to TheMocoShow, which is how many of you may know him. Works at Trader Joe's and is a longtime election judge, which is a poll supervisor, as everyone here knows, for the Montgomery County Board of Elections, and has previously volunteered. Cordell has previously volunteered with a volunteer fire department and healthcare facilities in Ohio and Montgomery County, and hopes to become involved in similar opportunities again in the future. She's a great voice in the county. I'm excited to have him talk tonight about covering traffic crashes in the county and many other things about local news and how we cover stories. So please welcome Cordell.
Awesome. Thank you for that introduction, and I'll get started. Left slide, please. Thank you. So how most crashes or incident reports in the county start are a call goes to the county's Emergency Communications Center, which is a building in the Durward-Gaithersburg border area. Don't really want to start that. Sorry if that's controversial. So that building answers several administrative lines, as well as the county's non-emergency line, which is 301-279-8000, and 911 calls. All of those go to the same center and are answered by the same people. Computer software distinguishes for them what are 911 calls and what are the non-emergency calls, in hopes that people are properly using both of those lines so they can prioritize the most critical calls first. And in Maryland, across the state, you can dial #77 and always be connected to the Maryland State Police, which in Montgomery County are in Rockville, and there's a small eastern sliver of the county which is now served by the College Park Barrack, which is another discussion for another day. Left slide, please. Awesome, thank you. So just for an overview, sorry if this is redundant for some of you, crash response and traffic enforcement in Montgomery County are handled by a variety of agencies. These include the County Police and Chevy Chase, Gaithersburg, Rockville, and Tacoma Park Police, as well as the Montgomery County Sheriff's Office, which has the same authority as county police across the county, and Maryland State Police, Maryland Transportation Authority Police, who primarily focus on the ICC, but they also help countywide and statewide with holiday and other grant-funded DUI enforcement and other initiatives. And the United States Park Police are responsible for the Clara Barton Parkway in the Bethesda-Brookmont area, as well as a number of miscellaneous access roads and facilities in the county. and the Maryland National Capital Park Police, the Montgomery County Division, are responsible for park facilities, various administrative buildings, and affiliated roadways across the county. Slide. So according to Data Montgomery, there are currently reports for 10,767 crashes across Montgomery County in 2023. This number tends to fluctuate for a few months after the year's end, so I wouldn't be surprised if it continues to bump up or down, and the reason for that is people finding out after the fact that they need a crash report for work or insurance, or deciding midway through the process that they don't want to follow up with a police crash report and asking for it to be canceled, which is a process but can be done. And that statistic does not include certain Chevy Chase Village reporting, which covers the Connecticut Avenue corridor south of Bradley, or Maryland State Police crash reports. And there's currently a bit of turmoil with that data because it's no longer publicly available for an interim basis due to software changes, and that hopes to be resolved and become publicly available again within the next several weeks. And just for some perspective, of the 10,767 crashes, not all of those were injury crashes, but there were almost 136,300 Montgomery County Fire Rescue responses in 2023. So specifically for responding to injury crashes, there were 2,934 which actually involved injury in 2023 in the county, and that means that the fire department and EMS showed up and there was someone there who actually sought treatment or had a documented refusal for their injury. And a 10,000-foot overview of the refusal process is it's basically documentation acknowledging, yes, I have some form of minor injury. No, I do not want emergency medical service treatment for any number of a variety of reasons. Yes, I understand this includes risk. And so the standard dispatch for Montgomery County Fire Rescue for any crash is an EMS unit, so an ambulance or a medic, like the one pictured, as well as what they call a heavy apparatus, which can be an engine, ladder truck, or rescue squad. And with a few exceptions across the county, at any given time, the units dispatched to a crash or other similar call types will be two of the closest units. And the Emergency Communications Center has preset dispatches for a variety of specialty scenarios, including crashes, whether that be hazardous cargo, or just fuel spilled, or someone crashing into a pole, or a building being involved, etc. Yes?
Real quick, let's just ask at the end, because we'll get to the presentation with a Q&A. We always do that. Really good conversation.
Sure.
But you just finish up for now and then ask at the end, please. Thanks.
Sorry about that.
It's all good.
And yeah, so there's preset specialty dispatches, and across the county there are 35 functioning county rescue stations right now, with immediate plans for a new one in Pike and Rose in the next couple of years. Slide. So this was just more of the data. Right now, 2023 statistics, like I said earlier, are not entirely finalized because there will be some tweaking on administrative and quality assurance bases, but as of this screenshot was from this morning, actually, there are 2,934 crashes with injury and 3,149 where the fire department responded, but then people were not injured. And that's usually people, legally it's technically either people deciding before the fire department gets there that they don't want any treatment, or a large percentage of those are also crashes called in by passerby who either misinterpret or overstate the severity of the crash, prompting fire rescue to go out, but then either everyone's fine or everyone wants nothing to do with any form of response. So one of the more misconstrued, I think, responses to crashes are when rescue squads respond, because they do carry some exceptionally advanced equipment, but they're also going to very routine, mundane calls. So I know a lot of the time on Facebook or Nextdoor, for example, for social media coverage, people will see one of these at a scene and automatically think it's either horrifically bad or involves insane severity of injuries. But in Montgomery County and most of Maryland, regardless of the severity of injury or the type of call, it's sent through a process called AVL, or automated vehicle location, which means that the closest units are sent to the call. So it includes very specialized units or much more basic and plentiful units, such as what we all know as pumpers or fire engines, etc. And the county has 6 rescue squads right now across the county, and also leans on mutual aid from in Prince George's County, Berwyn Heights, Hyattsville, in Frederick County, Carroll Manor, which is Adamstown, or Newmarket, or in Carroll County itself, there's Mount Airy, and in Fairfax, there is Scotts Run. All of the fire stations down here also have their own rescue squads and specialty teams, which respond into the county on a weekly to almost near daily basis in some scenarios. Slide. Or actually, can you go back? Sorry. One tidbit I forgot is in Montgomery County, some of the longer ladder trucks, which people frequently call tillers, and they also carry basic extrication tools for vehicle accidents and collisions, and rope rescue. And in the Up County, where there are longer response times just because it's a rural area, the county has 2 rescue engines, which are not full rescue squads, but they do carry basic extrication equipment to be able to accomplish initial actions when responding to a collision with entrapment or other complicated scene. Slide. So there are frequent discussions of crashes on social media as well as in traditional media here in Montgomery County and the surrounding area. And these, at least the initial discussions, are often focused on the brief impacts such as traffic or what the injuries are initially thought of being. Well, there are often much more long-lasting impacts of these crashes, from medical to financial needs to businesses and employment statuses. The list goes on. And one recommendation I have for everyone here is Bethesda Magazine and the Washington Post. Both have excellent extended pieces featuring Montgomery County's Collision Reconstruction Unit. And this is a team it hovers around 8 officers who, in addition to their regular duties, travel across the county to investigate and document the most severe crashes. And the quote from one of them in the Washington Post was that they use Newtonian physics to tell the stories that victims cannot, because there are frequently called scenes that involve fatalities or life-changing injuries where, either from the initial impact or from subsequent medical treatment, the patients do not remember the crash or what led up to it. Slide, please. So more misconceptions surrounding crashes and coverage that I frequently encounter both in my personal life and time online as my social media. People will often misconstrue severe injuries based on the size of emergency response or external vehicle damage for a wide variety of reasons that Sean or I could go on until tomorrow. These are not adequate indicators of the true severity of injuries, because with external vehicle damage, thanks to many modern vehicle enhancements, there are crumple zones, internal occupant protection, and a wide variety of other features that make it. Obviously, severe damage has some indicators, but basing a judgment on injuries solely based on that is just inadequate. And the size of emergency response, there are a wide variety of scenarios where there will be extended responses for very minor injuries, from fuel spills to enhanced needs surrounding specialty cargo of a commercial vehicle. The list goes on. If there are emergency vehicles sitting there for several hours, it sometimes means injuries are severe, but it's not a direct correlation. And that's about it for this slide. Slide, please, love. So in DC, there's still a variety of traditional media, including just last week, the radio station WTOP, which I'm sure we're all familiar with, was named for the 13th year, almost 14th year in a row, as the highest billing radio station. They say they're in the country, but it's actually all of North America. And in addition to this, there are a variety of news outlets which continue daily local coverage in DC, from the TV channels to WTOP to a variety of online sources and a variety of other stations, including Federal News Radio, WMAL, and to an extent WAMU, though WAMU has unfortunately had some recent changes. significantly deteriorating local coverage. And the market for traditional media in DC continues to remain strong even as it faces its challenges both locally and nationally. There has been a wave especially last year in 2023 of buyouts, layoffs, and other closely timed but not directly related departures of significant media figures in the DC scene and nationally. And one metric that continues to drive overall success in many industries, including online media, is their online engagement. So clicks, viewership, overall viewership, etc., and ad revenue. And another key position that remains strong even as the media scene continues to evolve are the PIOs, or public information officers, from local agencies who continue on to an extent, almost 24/7 basis, get out messages to the community from their agencies. One shining example here in the county is Montgomery County Fire and Rescue Service Public Information Officer Pete Perringer, who has been doing spokesman and public safety work for more than 40 years and continues to engage online in various forms of social media every single day. Slide. So for Montgomery County specifically, there are a variety of online sources that provide both website and social media-based coverage of a variety of events, incidents, overall news in the county. This includes the TheMocoShow, which I'm a part of, Moderately Moco, Moco 360, which used to be Bethesda Magazine and Bethesda Beat and is apparently changing their name again soon. The Patch newsletters and online website, and Maryland Matters, which is another nonprofit website. I could go on all day listing smaller and different sources. And this continues in conjunction with a variety of traditional media, both in their native forms as well as their online presence. Left slide, please. Awesome. So this is just a little bit about me from a Washington City paper article during the pandemic. I've been online as Cordell Traffic for about 10 years now, and I started it very much as a purely traffic observation account, and now have evolved it more into a general focus on public safety and health and transportation and transit and all that related, and I've been contributing to the TheMocoShow for about 4 years. So that some of this is what I just said. There are many other social media pages which cover Montgomery County, including MCFRS PIO, who is Pete Perringer, who I just talked about, Alan Henney, DMV News Live, and others. And we all try to highlight hyperlocal incidents and events, in some cases getting them attention they would not otherwise, and in others prompting future coverage from more traditional media like TV news and radio, or the Washington Post, etc. And on the right is one thing. I played a small role in getting the speed limit on a stretch of Massachusetts Avenue through the Bethesda Glen Echo area reduced recently, and this was separate initially from my online presence, but then I, honestly, without even knowing, was the first one to post the reduced speed limit online, and it got a bunch of attention, including a shot on the CNBC national report. Slide, sorry. Yeah, now I'll take questions.
We'll take questions. Yes, we'll take some questions. Please keep it fairly brief, and we'll just, yeah, you can, we'll pass around the microphone. You just sort of hold it like here. That's fine. It'll pick up your voice, and we can just start passing it around. So, who is a question first? Yeah.
So you mentioned on the crash reporting, they document people refusing. Do they document the reasons people refuse? Like if it's a cost thing?
I'm choosing words very carefully. The overall answer is yes, but some of that spirals into HIPAA-related things. So there absolutely is documentation available. I know there have been efforts to make it more public before, but there have been honest fears of unintentionally revealing either overly specific identifying information or people's healthcare status or previous injuries or ailments or all that. So to answer your question concisely, yes, but it's a rabbit hole. Where there's definitely room for more research and more publication of it, but it must proceed cautiously.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Jeff Wehara. I had a question about the cost of a ride in an ambulance. Sometimes people get these bills for $10,000. How are we working on that in the county?
That varies significantly for a variety of reasons. In Montgomery County, there are a number of categories who do not receive a direct ambulance bill, but that depends substantially on insurance, and it's another answer where the complete answer would be a whole metric of things. It depends. The short version is it depends on various insurance providers, the level of care received, and if you called for the ambulance or if someone else called for the ambulance. I know there are cases of people paying, unfortunately, exorbitant fees and then later on getting some of that back even when they don't expect it because of administrative process stuff on the tail end. But yes, it's being worked on. I know Sean might know the exact date, October or November of last year, the county council had a part of a hearing focused on it, and there are statewide efforts through the Maryland Institute of Emergency Medical Service as well. So yes, it's being worked on. No, there isn't a perfect solution right now. What? In theory.
All right, hey, my name's Jake Goodman. I actually was running late a bit because of a bus delay. While we're on that note, actually, when we talk about these coverage of these auto accidents, especially accidents that involve buses and trucks and things like that, how much of that coverage, if the bus, because most of the times the bus driver's not at fault, or it's just the middle, how much of that coverage typically, really emphasizes, the speeding car was in the wrong, or how much of that coverage really, doesn't put blame on the bus? Because sometimes I feel like we're often in this car-centric society, we're often transit users and those who, people, on the bus are often portrayed in the media in a bad light.
Yeah.
So, with that leads to my second question. How can the media start portraying transit users in a good light and portray public transit as a good alternative option so we don't have to deal with all this stuff with auto accidents and stuff?
I would say the overall answer is definitely increase transit coverage in the media overall and make it more commonplace and more visually seen, even as simple as for transit stories online, actually putting a picture rather than just a stock image of the actual agency or the actual bus route, etc., and just making it so that people, even when they're scrolling Facebook at an ungodly hour, can see pictures of, oh yeah, there are people in my county, state, region actually taking the bus to go somewhere. And then for the crash side, that spills into commercial vehicle stuff, which is a whole nother presentation. But I definitely think there's room for better outreach surrounding commercial vehicle safety, including transit buses. I know the Maryland Highway Safety Office tries to do anyway a lot of grant-based work surrounding commercial vehicle safety, which include blind spots, stopping distance, turning radius. Do they try enough? I would counter that with, do they have enough funding? And I personally would say the answer is absolutely not. But so much, I think another misconception is a lot of people do not realize how much of the traffic safety and enforcement space is solely based on grants.
So yeah. Hi Cordell, thank you for coming.
Yeah, definitely.
So I just want to ask you questions about because I recently when reports have been talking about okay, a little bit lower. Okay, all right. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, apologize. So I just wanted to ask you some questions about like how does a report deal with when there's like a pedestrian safety incident around Montgomery County, because I've been hearing about this very often from local news, and it's particularly for people who've been like driving too fast on the speed limit, is because there's been a lot of citation that's reported by Montgomery County Police Departments. So this is what it caused, like cars accident going on, and this may include pedestrian safety incidents in Montgomery County, but not just in Montgomery County, but throughout the regions, is because that's like a huge challenge for everybody that people has been dealing about this, and particularly for people who are like new drivers or something like that, how to deal with this.
How to deal with speed overall?
Yeah, dealing with speeds limited, who are people who are driving too fast, and as well as for pedestrian safety going on, who've been hit. Especially for dealing with the pedestrian safety going on, because we got a lot of people who've been like either hit by the train or cars or trucks across the road. This may include the highway.
Yeah. So thank you for that question. I'll try to divide it into a couple parts. So for speed enforcement overall, this is more my opinion, separate from the social media stuff, but it also correlates with various statistics. That I definitely think physical traffic calming is one of the easiest ways, well, not easiest, but most effective ways to truly slow speeds. And there definitely are some merits to concentrated either manual or photo enforcement, but those can be contested later and become more contentious around a variety of other issues besides the speed itself. I think more physical improvements and infrastructure changes need to be made to effectively, in the corridors where it matters, like you were referencing, highways in urban areas, high pedestrian areas, to actually physically both almost not directly force drivers to go slower, but make it so that going faster than a safe and prudent speed feels substantially uncomfortable. And then as far as your rail safety question, that's a very different set of circumstances, but it is a constant issue, as you pointed out, and there are a variety of very tech-savvy solutions, such as laser detection of people near the tracks, which there are some railroads near the West Coast and up in Canada that have been effectively integrating various sensors on existing signal infrastructure. So that allows people in off-site monitoring facilities or even sitting at home to detect signals of when there are people near the tracks. The disadvantage of that is it has obviously initial expenses, and it can be hard to distinguish, especially in the middle of the night or in pouring rain, etc., who's supposed to be there versus who has either illegally accessed the area or has poor intentions of being there, whether that be recklessly trying to do something like walk across a railroad bridge or trying to take photos of a train in an unsafe way, or more harmful intentions. I'll leave it at that.
And I was going to say wind and deer too.
What?
the lasers would pick up wind and deer as well.
Wind, deer, maintenance workers.
But I was going to ask a quick question, then I'll pass it to him. And I'll just say, since this topic was local coverage of crashes, and my background in journalism is always, it bleeds. If it bleeds, it leads. Of the 10,000 plus crashes per year, which are the ones that get reported on? Because obviously we're not hearing about the greatest majority of them.
Yeah, thank you for that. Sorry, I didn't say it earlier, but usually the most reported ones are either where the injuries are known to be extremely serious, first off, or when the traffic or other impacts are extreme.
Do you research like the causes of all these accidents, or do the governmental units that you listed, do they freely report like the cause of like drunk driving or distracted driving, or what is that statistic available?
It is available through Data Montgomery and other sources, both at the state and national level. With the more blatant cases, like you were saying, of truly distracted driving or impaired or speed to aggressive driving, it's all available. but the complicating factor for that is for lower severity crashes. So what most of us think of as fender benders, there are options where even once the police are there, you can just exchange information, which gives insurance and the vehicle owners the relevant information. But the negative of that is it does not document, like you were saying, the cause or specific circumstances of the crash officially. Because then for the vast majority, the causation data comes from the police reports of the crash. There are a small number of outlying circumstances where that isn't the case, but for the vast majority, especially the majority of the 10,000 I referenced, for example, the causation data and any outlying factors are right from the police report.
I'm going to have a question about language and
Yeah.
coverage.
Yeah.
So our title is crash,
Yes.
and then it used to be prevailing to say accident.
Yep.
Can you talk about some of the other local coverage and how well they're adapting to better language and how you're figuring into that?
Yeah, definitely. There's definitely a strong movement that I support to move away from the term accident for a whole variety of reasons. And most, I think, the widely accepted substitute is crash, which I think is safe to say. But the one negative I've seen, which I wasn't expecting to see, is some of the outlets here locally are using more severe terms instead of just the word accident. I've seen several online articles that have described what I would call a crash, what used to be known as accident, as like a collision with entrapment or collision with injection, when those just weren't occurring. So I think it's finding the balance between moving the terminology along without having it be confused with specific terminology for more severe kinds of crashes.
And also referring to the driver, not the vehicle.
Yes, yep, driver, not vehicle.
Hi, could you elaborate your point about how
Yes.
I assume, I guess that also means pedestrian and bicycle.
Yes, yep.
Can you talk more about that?
Yeah.
Talk about in relation to actual public government funding.
Yeah, definitely. There's
Can you repeat your question? It just turned off. Now it's on. Yeah.
No problem, no problem. Could you elaborate your point about grants being used to fund traffic safety? And I assume that includes bikes and pedestrians,
Yes, it
and
does.
in comparison to public funding, meaning government taxes. Yeah.
So this is another great question where there's a short answer for tonight and then a longer answer for another discussion or presentation. But the 10,000-foot view sort of is that almost every public agency has some form of an annual or every several years budget, and that includes agencies like law enforcement. And then on top of that, there are agencies like the Maryland Highway Safety Office here, or there are some nonprofits who do it, like the Washington Regional Alcohol Program, or RAP. And then there are some more national or even international organizations that offer specific funding, usually from either fundraisers or individual donations for specific purposes. So, like, I know, I'm trying to think of the best specific example. The easiest one that comes to mind is some of the alcohol and other impaired driving checkpoints. Those will be awarded specific agencies with very strict terms of you can use this funding for this many officers at this time to look for these several things. And there have actually been debates on the policy and legislative side about whether the officers working specific grants should also be responding to calls for service when those are unrelated to the grant enforcement, because that then spills into response time and overall budget and everything like that. Obviously, if there's a truly critical call for service, they're going to respond, but if it's something more trivial, even if they're right in the area, they might concentrate on the DUI enforcement or pedestrian, a variety of crosswalk initiatives. I know the Maryland Highway Safety Office also offers, I don't know the post-COVID numbers offhand, I knew them before COVID, several grants in the summer for specific safety around beaches, both in the Ocean City area, as well as down in Calvert County. There are a few off of Route 5 where I know the Calvert Sheriff usually gets a sum of money, I don't know the number, I apologize, every summer to have deputies concentrate on both specific traffic violations around the beach area as well as specific violations on the beach and help preventing rip current deaths, alcohol-related incidents on the beach itself, etc.
I have one. I'll stand up so y'all can hear me. Yeah. Oh, sure. Okay. Thanks. It's oftentimes in urbanist circles and like urban planning, there's commentary about the size of fire apparatus, fire trucks, and how it influences the layout of streets, cities, whatnot. I'm not aware of any direct examples in Montgomery County of fire rescue shutting down a given development, like at least not directly. But this come up in many cities, especially around bike lanes, narrow streets, curb radii, things like that. So can you talk a bit about, well, do you think fire trucks are too big? Do you think they're about the right size? Are there ways that modern fire trucks can be around the size they are and still integrate well with a walkable or urbanist, land use form? Just what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, there are definitely multiple ways to approach that. I know up in New England, I think it was Cambridge, Massachusetts. Apologize if I got that city wrong. But one of the cities up there recently took delivery of a bunch of traditional diesel fire engines, except for the fact that their rear wheels could also steer, which enables the same apparatus to go around corners in a much tighter space. That has some strong advantages. I know the one resistance has been it does completely change to a surprising extent the pre-existing ability and skill set to drive them because they turn completely differently, which in the broader and future looking sense is definitely a good thing, but in the immediate switching from one to the other sense can create problems. And there are also parallel developments about shortened apparatus along the electrification side of things, and that has unfortunately been met with resistance overall on the electric side of things, which has also spilled into the we don't want the shorter area when the majority of the resistance has actually been centered on the electrification side.
Hi. My question is about speed cameras.
Yeah.
We live just off of Wayne Avenue. There was a speed camera in front of the school for several years that was working, and cars definitely put on the brakes before they got to the school, and then they'd speed up afterwards. To me, it seems like speed cameras can help reduce speed, which might reduce crashes. I'd like to know what you think about having more speed cameras.
I definitely agree with that overall, and I think the county's done a overall good job implementing, combining the stationary speed cameras, which are what you see on the steel poles that look like light posts, with the more mobile ones, which are I have a friend who says they're R2D2 sized, the little, I'm not even sure how to describe them, like kitchen cabinet or R2D2 sized mobile cameras, which can obviously be moved around. I know one unintended side effect of that has been just a couple weeks ago, in fact, that one wound up in a Bethesda Chevy Chase High School classroom as a prank, which obviously crosses the lines, and I know that's been handled, but there's a balance. There's definitely advantages of the mobile cameras, but there are also, like you were referencing, when it's a specific area like a school zone or something, there are advantages to having them more stationary, both so that they don't get carried around during an open lunch, and so that there's a more prolonged effect for that specific area. School zones, I know others are hospitals or dense residential areas where when you want over several years a continued effective slowing down traffic, the stationary ones are the way to go. But yes, overall, they're a strong positive.
Chris?
I mean this somewhat facetiously, but in the Civic Association I'm most familiar with speed bumps. Have always been the most contentious neighborhood issue, Lamberton Drive, in the case of Kent Mill. And I've thought about front end shops with the ability to overnight relocate stealth bumps. It could be entirely self-funding, and I'd have to have my front end aligned, I'm sure, at some point. Thank you.
More realistically, one thing I will say is I know the state has been looking at various portable speed bumps for work zone applications.
Yeah, what's a portable speed bump?
Most of the ones they've been looking at are large masses of usually recycled rubber, which can be laid across 1 or 2 lanes of traffic. And the issues they've been having are adequate ways to anchor it down where it stays in place, but is also removable at the end of the project or shift that day, etc. There's definitely more research to be done there.
Another couple questions about automated enforcement since we're on the topic.
Yeah.
Obviously, speed cameras are pretty common. They have been for many years. Two-parter. One, why aren't stop sign cameras more common? Seems pretty straightforward, yet I think there's a couple in D.C. I'm not aware of any in Montgomery County, but that seems like a pretty easy thing to enforce with the camera in 2024. Why not that? And also, how about enforcing aggressive driving through automated means, where it may not just be one action, like someone driving crazy for 4 or 5 miles down George Avenue, for example. Are there automated ways to detect that so that you're not entirely dependent on just an in-person officer seeing it and making the stop, but there's a way to detect it and almost have an officer anticipate where they're going and stop them that way?
Yeah, so there definitely are automated ways of doing it. I know there has been some movement at the state level for various forms of that using the tolling infrastructure on the ICC, combining that with reasonable speed and lane positions and other things which are already being documented for financial and tolling reasons. I think there are definitely IT hurdles with that, and it obviously requires more data storage and processing. And as for, what was the first part of your question? Sorry. Oh yeah, stop sign cameras. DC definitely leads the area in that. I know there are a couple in the Mount Vernon area, which I think is Fairfax County. I'm less familiar. The roads around there, I'm less familiar with Virginia roads than I am on this side of the river. I personally am not aware what the current legislative situation for them in Maryland is, but other than that, I know the way the current speed camera program is it would need to be an expansion or a new RFP, which brings its own hurdles, not unique to traffic enforcement.
I have a couple questions
Yeah,
about your personal coverage,
yeah.
and then I'll pass it to him. So, you can't be 24/7.
No.
So, yeah, do you sleep, and then how do you have auto coverage or auto post?
I do not. I've briefly experimented with a few auto coverage things for a variety of reasons. I chose not to.
Mm-hmm.
I also do not collect any direct money through my account. The MocoShow stuff I do is paid, but my own Cordell traffic stuff is not. There might be more of a market in the future for automation. I've debated doing it, but overall, there tends to be more of a lull overnight, and a higher percentage of the calls have specific and sensitive information overnight that I would not want to wake up to. Oh, look what was automatically posted 4 hours ago, and then having to deal with the fallout from that.
And then do you have a tip jar?
Do I have a tip jar personally? Not really, no.
So circling back to transit coverage in the media and how we can better enhance transit use of the media. Often the narrative around public transit and media is that, in North America and in many parts of the world, in many major cities, subways and metros are infested with crime, and the buses have always have all this crime around. So how do we encourage more transit use if the media is portraying an ugly narrative of our public transit systems when in fact a lot of this is being blown out of proportion, false statistics, fake news, so to speak. I mean, yes, there is crime on some transit systems. Yes, there is things like, but WMATA and many other systems have been doing a lot better at trying to get a handle on that. So how do we encourage transit use for those who are, I guess, scared to do that, to get on, various,
I think one part is definitely increasing coverage of modernization and positive improvement efforts. So even as simple as I know here, I think it was the beginning of 2023, it might have been late 2022, sorry, that a bunch of the escalators in the existing Silver Spring station have been replaced, and several other places along the Red Line. And I think even small things like that, like in the near term, does that seem small? Yes, but when it keeps them in service in the middle of summer when it's a 100-degree day and the other options are trains bypassing the station or a huge line for elevators, that impact starts to add up. So I think there's definitely more room for specific coverage of positive upgrades like new infrastructure, new vehicles, etc., as well as even individually. I know there are several reporters in the DC area who will even just post a picture when they're riding the train. And I do think more of that will help people see it as an everyday option, not as either negative or something far out.
We need to stop making the media fear. We need to push away from this fear.
Yes.
Crime,
Yep. I agree.
Yeah. So I am sympathetic to the fact that it's important to cover the scale of the issue that we're dealing with when it comes to crashes in Montgomery County, especially. We have the average is one death on our roads every week.
Yep.
But at the same time, there's something to be, how do we also make sure that we're not overwhelming people with the scale of the issue to the point that they become that they just check out. How do we make sure that people don't go, well, it's, the problem's too big, I don't care anymore, I'm just numb to it.
I think more specific coverage focused on trouble spots with repeat crashes with similar circumstances will help raise awareness of overall trends without seeming like, oh my god, every morning there are however many crashes, because there are definitely many that are attributable to trouble spots, problem trends, repeat illegal maneuvers, the list goes on, but there are a small subset where it's truly more 1,000 unique circumstances happened in a specific way to allow this crash to happen. So I think it's sort of twofold: minimizing coverage of the ones with less severity and that are much harder to repeat, and improving coverage of specific trends and specific problem spots where there are objective improvements to be made or just changes of behavior that will improve outcomes and decrease frequency of crashes.
This is less of a question than more of an observation. I guess this is more of an observation than a question, but I guess as a journalist and the other journalists in the room can maybe comment. I've been the victim of a violent crime in the train. Not here. I was visiting my parents. And I made a point after it happened, other than my glasses being broken, the biggest problem I faced was dealing with my health insurance afterwards. And I just wonder, for all these accidents that are happening or incidents that happen on buses or trains, I wonder how many people, if they were directly asked what has been their biggest challenges, because if someone asked me what was my biggest challenge after being a victim of a crime, it wasn't the fact the train was bad or the bus. It was my dealing with my health insurance.
Yeah.
That was the real violence I faced.
Separate from this, I personally know from some academic stuff I've done that there is research on the national level about insurance trends and outcomes. I am by no means qualified to speak on that, but I know it's out there. And beyond that, I do think that spills back into the question about medical refusals and other processes where it's balancing publication of relevant information without getting into specific health scenarios, pre-existing conditions, all of that. So I do think there's definitely room for a numeric scale or something to highlight the ease of the insurance process or the crazy hoops it made you jump through, but I do think it's a double-edged sword of exposing more of it without getting into, oh look, so-and-so's personal health insurance history is now fully online for the world to see.
Of course.
Yeah.
I mean, just want to, before I get into what I was going to, my comment on, suggestion, just to, jump on that a bit with the health insurance thing. I'm not a healthcare expert. I mean, but I have been doing a lot of research relating to healthcare systems and healthcare policy. And, if we started to enact more of a universal healthcare system in this country, like some of the other developed countries in the world, then maybe we might be able to have a better system for handling that after accidents by not, overcharging people for and things like that. Anyway, but I think it's something that we should also be doing to kind of like raise more awareness of the issues around accidents and okay, I'm sorry. Crashes, to raise more awareness around these, around crashes and how to better prevent them. When I was in high school, there was a big, drunk driving prevention safety day where they had in the bus lot, 2 cars, and it was like a show. It wasn't like actual, but they made it seem like these 2 cars just crashed into another. Presented it like so. What if we did this? What if ACT we could somehow do the same thing as like a good way to like educate people, like show the 2 and then put a poster around it, say,
yeah,
if you were on the train or bus now, this wouldn't happen.
Yeah, there definitely are specific outreach opportunities, like you highlighted, around planned crashes and other forms of demonstration. I know locally at the official level, the resistance to more of those planned demonstrations is that it does commit resources away from responding to actual calls or engaging in more specific training scenarios for career development and preparedness, etc.
All right, well, thank you, Cordell. This is a great discussion. We got one more right here. All right, we'll do one more question, then we'll wrap it up there.
Thank you, Sean. Do I remember right from the presentation that in a year there are about 2,000 crashes where there's a medical transport?
Where there's medical treatment, yes, not necessarily transport. I'm sorry if that was not clear. That can be either treatment on the scene and then transport, or treatment on the scene depending on severity of injuries, and then either a person being driven to. There's a longer answer here, but based on current trends and procedures, right now the policy is that the actual field EMS units have to decide in advance, well, not in advance, but in consultation with supervisors, what hospital they're going to. So there are times where people will get treated on the scene and then not want to go to that hospital. And if they're low acuity enough, they're allowed to either through personal transportation or a friend, or in rare cases even transit, go to a further away healthcare facility that would not have been where they were transported to by an ambulance, but either offers objective benefits or in a greater percentage offers perceived benefits to the individual seeking treatment.
Well, the thrust of my question leads to, if that works out to approximately 5 or 6 a day.
Yes, yep.
And I'm guessing that there are not that many crimes per day that result in 5 or 6 where the EMS has to do treatment
Yes.
or transportation.
Yep.
I think that's one way to look at things and to show people how dangerous motorists driving can be
Yes.
relative to crime.
Yep.
Cool. All right. So thank you, Cordell. Appreciate it. Let's just give one more round of applause. And thank you all for being here. A couple quick announcements as we wrap up. Next month's meeting will be on June 11th, if I'm not mistaken, right? Yeah, I believe it'll be Tuesday, June 11th here at the Civic Building. And please note, by then the red line will be shut down from June 1 to end of August for some Purple Line integration work. It's going to be quite the change around here. So if you come here by transit, which I think most of us do, which is great, please plan ahead. Know how you're going to get here, because not only will the metro be closed down, but some of the ride-on routes are going to get rerouted as part of some work that's elsewhere going on around Silver Springs. So it's pretty big impacts there. Speaker to be announced. Look for that on our social media next week or so. And any other announcements I should make?
And in relation to the upcoming shutdown, if you haven't already, please take a flyer or take a few if you want and give them to your friends and family. Contact Ex-Secretary Weefeld and tell him that we need the bus lanes on George Avenue to go all the way from Glenmont Station to the district line. Right now, the announced lanes will only be for certain portions of George Avenue. They will not be near Forest Glen, and they will not be near Whedon. And since we all know that that's where almost all the traffic is, that's where we need the bus lanes the most. And for some reason, they've decided not to put them there. So please contact Secretary Weefeld and get your friends and family to do the same. And thank you all so much.
Thank you all for being here.